Goodnight Lighthouse. I'm Miss Dorothy, and I'm here to read you another story. And I have another bedtime book about bedtime. This is a fun book. This is called Christopher Sat Straight Up in Bed. Christopher sat straight up in bed. This is a story about Christopher who's having a sleepover with Grandma and Grandpa, but he hears a noise when he goes to sleep, and it causes him to sit straight up and try and figure out what it is. I wonder what the noise was. I wonder what happens after Christopher gets up. We're going to have to get into this book and find out. Are you ready to get inside this book and find out what caused Christopher to sit straight up in bed? Good. I need you to sit up and listen up, because here we go. Christopher Sat Straight Up in Bed. Written by Kathy Long. Illustrated by Patricia Cantor. Honk. Choo! What's that? Christopher sat straight up in bed. He watched and waited. He didn't hear anything else, so he lay back down. It must have been a dream, he said. He closed his eyes. Then he heard it again. Honk. Choo! What's that? Christopher sat straight up in bed again. It sounds like an elephant trumpeting. He tiptoed to the window and looked out, but only saw the moon playing hide and seek with the clouds. Christopher waited and listened. He didn't hear anything else except the squeak of his grandparents' bed. He crawled back into bed and closed his eyes. Then he heard it again. Oh no. Honk. Choo! What's that? Christopher sat straight up in bed again. Maybe there's a monster under my bed. He looked under the bed, but only saw his grandpa's slippers and a bunch of little dust bunnies. He waited and listened. The house was quiet, so he crawled back into bed. No monsters. Honk. Choo! What's that? Christopher sat straight up in bed again. There might be a bear in my closet. He crept over and opened the closet door. Squeak! He only saw his grandpa's shirts hanging in a row and a cowboy hat sitting on the shelf. He waited, but he didn't hear anything else, so he crawled back into bed. He wrapped up in the covers. He's really getting nervous about this. Honk. Choo! What's that? Christopher sat straight up in bed again. It sounds like a dinosaur stomping down the street. He looked out the window, but he only saw the neighbor's house, silent in the moonlight. I have to find out what's making that sound. Well, now he has to figure out what it is, because it's not a dinosaur, and it's not a bear, and it's not an elephant. So Christopher crawled out of bed and crept to the door. He listened. No sound. He waited. Still no sound. He waited a bit more. Then he heard it again. Honk. Choo! It's coming from down the hall. Creep, creep, creep. Creak, creak, creak. Honk. Choo! He's going to find the sound. His heart beat faster. The shadow of the mountain lion danced on the wall. He froze. The shadow moved closer. Christopher's legs wouldn't move. The shadow looked as if it was going to pounce. What is that a shadow of? Suddenly, his grandma's cat jumped out. Christopher jumped back and muffled a scream. Oh, Whiskers, it's just you, he laughed. It was just the kitty cat. Then he heard the sound again. It was louder than ever, and the window shook. It's coming from my grandparents' room. He continued down the hall and crept through their bathroom door. Honk. Choo! It's coming from my grandparents' bed. He tiptoed closer. He's being so brave. Honk. Choo! It's coming from my grandpa. Grandma poked Grandpa with her elbow. You're snoring. Roll over, she said. Grandpa rolled over, mumbling. The bed squeaked. Christopher laughed. Grandpa snores loud. What's that? Grandma said, and sat straight up in bed. What's that? Grandpa said, and he sat straight up in bed. It's just me, Christopher said. I heard something. Come on in, Grandma said. You can sleep with us, but I have to warn you, your grandfather snores. So I've heard, Christopher said. If he does, poke him and tell him to roll over, Grandma said. Good night. Good night, said Christopher. Good night, Grandpa replied. The house was quiet for a while. Honk-choo! Grandpa snoring again. Christopher sat straight up in bed. Honk-choo! Oh my, it was Grandpa. It was Grandpa snoring that was keeping everybody awake. Christopher kept sitting up in bed. He was imagining that it was all kinds of crazy things. And then he followed the noise and he found out it was Grandpa. Then he tried to sleep with Grandma and Grandpa, and that didn't work out very well because Grandpa snored really loud. Does your grandpa snore really loud? This was a fun book. It was a fun book to remind me that sometimes we hear things in the night and they are not what we think they are. It's usually something simple because our mom and dad are always there to make sure that there's no bad noises at night. And it's usually somebody snoring. I really like this book. I really liked Christopher, and I liked that he figured out what the noise was. But now that Christopher's off to bed, it's time for you to get off to bed. It's time for all my friends to get under their covers, get cuddled up, curled up, ready for a really good night's sleep. And whatever you do tomorrow when you're playing, having a great time, obey and obey right away. And then come back and see Miss Dorothy, because I'm going to be sitting right here ready to read a book to you. Bye! Thanks for reading with Miss Dorothy. I hope you enjoyed this book, and I hope you'll come back soon to read another. What's your favorite book? Drop Miss Dorothy a note and let me know. I'll go find it and I'll read it to you. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share. I'll see you soon.